Hey everyone, Hunter here again. Hey, we're going to do the tutorial on how to get rid of these seams in your kit fuel tanks. I've got the Mobius ProStar tanks here, and as you cut them off the parts tree, this is what you'll have. This is the two halves. They have a nice flange that goes all the way around the perimeter of the tank that actually insets into the other half. It's a pretty nice idea. You see a lot of aircraft and armor kits have this in it, and it kind of locks the two parts together. They're real nice. Now some kits don't use that where they have the lip. It's just when these two surfaces meet out here, they're just setting flat with each other. If you do have one of those that does not have the lip, one of the tricks that I do is I will take a piece of sandpaper and lay down here, and I will actually take the kit tank and slide it back and forth on the sandpaper, both halves of the tank, and what that does is actually makes it nice and flat and true, so when you join the two halves together, that you have full contact all the way around. In the case of this also has two bosses inside of it with lineup pins. Since we have the flange all the way around, I normally leave the lineup pins in. I'm not really sure why they used both attachment points like that, but if you have one that does not have the recess all the way around the outside of it, and it does use lineup pins, I will take my snippers and go in and clip those pins off. I don't allow the pins to dictate the way these two parts line up. And as you can see, these are in chrome. This is the way they came off the parts tree. I won't be using the chrome because once you get rid of this seam, you have pretty much no chrome left. So I stuck mine in some Castrol Super Clean Purple Power, or whatever they call it, overnight, and it took all the chrome off and the clear coat that's underneath of it. So once I took them out of the cleaner, this is what I had. This is the same two halves of the tank. As you can see, the pins are in there, and the receiver pins are on this side. And those two pieces just pretty much snap together just like that. Now on this one, when I'm holding it on the ends, there is a gap already in that seam toward the center. It won't show up real good on the camera, but it is there. Actually, right there, you can see the gap in the center. Now, if you were to squeeze that in there, most of that will fill in. That's where you need to get into either a clamp or your rubber bands or something like that to pull that together. So basically the way I start out with, once I've got it to this point and I get ready to glue this together, I will take my Model Master black liquid cement. And what you want to do is come around on, like on the ProStar kit on these Mobius tanks, put the glue on the side that has the step in it, not the side that has the part that sticks out. So you just want to, start on the corner, and you don't want to put a whole bunch of glue on here, but you want to make sure that you get the whole perimeter of this covered. And if you get some glue squeezing out somewhere, that's fine. Actually, that may be a little bit better because then you've got full adhesion all the way around. So we're just going to run the glue around the edge of it here. Good bead all the way around. And if you're trying to do that with tube glue, yeah, you can do it, but you're going to make much more of a mess. I do not recommend tube glue to beginners, intermediates, pros, or anybody. I think with the modern glues that we have out there, tube glue is an old dinosaur that you really don't need. It doesn't dispense well. It's just not a very good glue. I mean, it'll hold something together. You'll never get it back apart, but it's just, this is much easier. It's a little bit more expensive, which is a drawback for some people. They don't want to spend money on glue, but this is a much better route to go, and it has the real fine applicator on it. So now we have the whole perimeter of that glued all the way around. And normally what I'll do is, if I've got a gap or something in that, let me see if I can find, yep, there it is. I will take some rubber bands and twist those up. And I will come in and slide them over top of the fuel tank. And you may have to put like 3 rubber bands on here, you know, one here, one in the center, one on this side to keep this pulled together. This liquid cement sets pretty quick, so, you know, probably 15-20 minutes should be good to go. You can take the rubber bands off of it. So once you have it to this stage here and you set it to the side, you know, as far as that one, you could go ahead and work on the other side, the other 2 halves, getting them glued together. But to keep the video as short as I can, I've already got this one glued together and it is set. This has been together for about a day now. And now you can start to see where you need to do your work at on it. This one here actually has a step where the 2 halves don't line up. One of the tricks that I do for that is I will go in with this is a black and gray sanding stick. The black is the real heavy side. The gray is a little bit lighter. It's probably about a 150 in regular sandpaper. Now, one thing to look for, if you have a step in your fuel tank, on the camera there, it's showing up on this side, the side that looks a little shinier. I don't think I got all the clear off of that. No, clear is still on there. But on this side that the clear is on, it's actually lower than this side here. So what you want to do with your sanding stick is go to the side that is raised and just kind of work with the contours of the tank and knock that raised section down. Don't bring your sandpaper over onto this low section because it's already low. You don't want to cut it any lower right yet. You want to get this high side down first. So just come in and work the high side down. And like I say, follow the contour of your tank. If it's got a compound curve in it, you know, make sure that you're following that compound curve and not just going back and forth and flattening this off. So I've got it down there pretty close to being even with the other side now. And then I will start doing the same thing. I'm rolling the sanding stick as I go on the end of this fuel tank to match the contour of the tank. And like I say, this is a little heavier grit here, but this will take a lot of material off pretty fast. And as soon as I get this sanded down here a little bit more, I'll hold it up here to the camera and show you what we have after this stage. Now, this is just on the ends. You don't have any detail or anything you really have to worry about sanding off out here. The only thing you're trying to do is just get the halves of the tank even with each other and still keep your contour of your tank on the ends. Okay, that's pretty decent there. I'll hold it up here and let you see where we're at with that. That's just with the initial sanding. Now, of course, you can still see the seam down through there. We're going to address that here in a minute. I'm going to show you what the next step is in the process. So now we're going to go up and start working on the seam that goes across the top and the bottom of the tank. And I'm not going to do both sides. I'll just pick a side here. Probably, well, I think this is the bottom of the tank. With a sharp number 11 blade in your holder, I just come in on the seam. Now this side over here is actually a little bit higher than this side here. So the lighter gray side is a little taller than the darker gray. What you want to do is take your hobby knife and just come in there with your number 11 blade and just kind of scrape the high side down a little bit. And don't try to get the knife jumping around. Don't put a lot of pressure down on the part. Just kind of let the knife slide across the plastic, and it will actually take a pretty good amount of material off. And you just want to keep making that pass right there in one area for right now. But when you see the knife start to score into shave off on this low side, that's when you want to stop and move back away from your seam a little bit and scrape a little bit further back. Now what I did with this part right here, and I'll show you that coming up, is where the strap stopped right here. I actually go ahead and kind of shave the plastic down right back to that point where that strap stops, and that way I can keep the curve going around the fuel tank without creating a flat spot in here. And you want to do the same thing around the front. Now on this one, it's not quite as critical to get it, you know, perfectly round, because you can't see these tanks unless it's sitting on a mirror. You can't see them from the top. You can see the ends of them. Actually, the back edge you can see, but you can't see much in anything else. So just move your knife back and forth, and that's the same thing with this section here and this section here, and then you have two little sections right here on the end, from the end to the strap. Same thing, you flip it over. Same thing with the hobby knife. Once you've got that flattened out where you don't have any step at all in it, then I start going in with my sanding sticks. I've got several different types. This one here is a little wide. It won't go in between the straps. It will work here in the center. And it's the same thing. You start with your heavier grit, which is the gray that we used on the end. And you don't need to do much sanding to it now because you've already got it down where it's flush. So you don't need to worry about it a whole lot. You just need to kind of get your roll back in your fuel tank. So you would go across it with your heavier grit, and the blue ones are a little bit lighter. They'll take the black or the dark gray sand scratches out. Same process, just roll it back and forth. Roll the tank in your fingers and sand it off just like that. And then the white is one of the lightest grits that I use. And just roll that back and forth like that. And you'll get it up to the point where, you know, the seam's nice and flat. You'll still be able to see the seam, but it's nice and flat, and you're on your way to having a decent looking kit tank here. Next step of the process that I do is, I'll show you real quick here because this video is getting a little long. So on the end of the fuel tank here, we've already got this sanded down. Everything's nice and smooth. Only thing is, you can see the seam. I go in with my Tamiya extra thin cement, and this has a brush applicator in it. And what you want to do is just brush right along the seam and then out from it a little bit. You don't want to put a lot of this on, but you want to get enough on there to actually, so you can almost see a pretty good, like you're painting. If you're painting with a brush and you're trying to get enough paint down to keep the brush strokes out of it, that's basically what you want to do with this liquid cement. You're just going to brush this right over top the seam, and don't brush it too much. Just get it in there, get it so it covers the whole seam in, and it will end up looking like that right there. Once you get it to this stage all the way around, work that all the way around. Be careful when you get to these parts here with gluing it. You got to either hold it like this with your fingers, or in the case of this tank, it has the slots in it that go against your brackets on the chassis. I just take a toothpick and slide a toothpick into that hole, into one of those slots right there. Slide it in there, and then you can take your Tamiya cement, and you can come in here on your seam, and you don't have to worry about touching it with your fingers. And because if you touch your fingers into this Tamiya cement, you're going to have a permanent fingerprint unless you sand it out. So that's basically all you're doing with it right there. And then once you get that done, just kind of stick this in something. If you're using a toothpick, stick it into something. I use floral foam, and that'll actually hold it up so nothing touches your glue. So once you've got that done, then you'll come back in. Now this is the muffler assembly. Same process, same brackets. It had a line all the way around it. After I sanded it, the Tamiya liquid cement, after it dried and I got it all sanded out, this is what we ended up with. The seam has almost disappeared totally. The next step that I go to after getting that sanded out is, well, let me show you what I'm using here. This is the Tamiya liquid primer surfacer. This happens to be gray. And I'll shake it up here a little bit. That's a lot of solids in the bottom of that stuff, so you want to make sure you get that shook real well, because if you don't, all you're doing is pretty much putting thinner on, and thinner is not going to really do what you want to do in this next step. So then all you're going to do is come in on your seam that has pretty much disappeared right now. Just come in on your seam all the way around and brush some of this on. Don't worry about the brush strokes. They pretty much go away as this stuff dries. And as soon as I get it on here, I'll hold it up here so you can see what I've done. And this would go all the way around your seam. Dress it all the way around. And if you're using this primer surfacer from Tamiya, always keep a jar of lacquer thinner handy, because that's what you're going to need to clean your brush up with. So let me drop the brush in here real quick. Because the lacquer sits in a brush, it's pretty much junk after that. You might as well throw it in the trash can. And put the cap back on this. And this is what we have once we got to that point there. You can see that that seam is, as of right now, that seam's gone. But as this dries, you may see a little bit of hint of that seam. If the seam does show back up, repeat this process here again. And after you repeat that process, I'm going to go ahead and start on the next part of the tutorial, which will be actually sanding this out and showing you the next procedures. So, like always, if you have any questions or concerns, just leave me a comment on the video, and I'll be more than glad to get back to you. And if you're, like I say, if you're following along, you know, get it up to this step here. It gets a lot easier from this point out. We're almost there, and we almost have a fuel tank that's going to look decent, and it's not going to get your points docked at the shows. So I'm going to go ahead and start on the next part of the tutorial, which will be sanding out this primer surfacer here. And so stay tuned for that, and I thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you later.